Hello friends, welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Elixir Specialty Coffee. Head to elixirspecialtycoffee.com and enter code IMAPITFORWARD to get 10% off your first order today. And if you think that you would make a great Elixir dealer, please send us an email to hello@elixirifyme or contact us through the contact page on our website, elixirspecialtycoffee.com. Remember, the best way to support this podcast is to support the businesses of our sponsors. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro, we are talking about a subject that is often overlooked, and I often wish that more attention was paid to this. I think it's increasingly becoming something that people are noticing, but not enough in my opinion. And it's the subject of systems and workflows in workplaces, in coffee workplaces. So, this applies as much in roasteries as it applies in cafes. And, before we deep dive into this, let's define what I mean by systems and workflows. So, for those of you who haven't worked in a cafe or a roastery before, a lot of the work is repetitive, and a lot of it, everything happens the same throughout the day. And so, for example, in a cafe, a customer comes in, a customer orders a coffee, a customer pays for the coffee, steps aside, that coffee needs to get made, and then the people behind the bar have to make that coffee, call it out to the customer, give it to the customer walks away, everyone's happy if it all goes perfectly. All of those steps are done hopefully hundreds of times in a cafe every day. And so in order to ensure that that system goes well, in order to ensure that that transaction goes well, we need systems and workflows that are put into place that help everybody on the team, including the customer, understand exactly what role they're going to play in that transaction from the time that the person walks through the door to the time that they leave the cafe. And often I've gone into places where you can quickly see that there are no systems or workflows that have been defined. Everyone's kind of just stumbling over each other, getting done what they need to get done without any kind of instruction that's been put in there by leadership. You can also see when there is systems that have been put into place and there's one person on the team who's decided, no, I'm not going to follow the systems or workflows. I know better. I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it. And the reason you can always tell is because they're the person who is getting in everybody's way. They're the person who's causing frustrations. So let's unpack the way that systems could and should be implemented, why they make a difference, and what happens when it goes wrong. So systems are important for both the employer and the employee. So they're important for the business, aka the employer. The reason they're important for the business is because it increases efficiency for the business. It increases peace of mind and clarity about what needs to get done, how it's going to get done, and when it should get done, in what order everything should get done. And that's really important because if you can tighten up your efficiencies, it means that you can maximize on the labor costs that you are paying. The return on investment is increased. And so when your team is efficient, you're able to churn through more customers and get them in and out as quickly as possible. I was recently speaking with a friend who orders her coffee 3 times a day at a minimum in Sydney. And she just got so frustrated with having to deal with shitty workflows that she has now engaged in ordering through an app. And the reason that this is so much more efficient for her is because she no longer has to engage anybody when it comes to having her coffee. And so what she does is she'll order off an app. She goes to the cafe. She knows exactly where to pick the coffee up. She's already paid through the app. She walks up, picks up her coffee and leaves. And for her, the number one priority is efficiency. So the system works for her. As the customer, she is serviced the way that she needs to be serviced when it comes to her coffee requirements. And because it's seamless, she continues to go only to cafes that provide that kind of efficiency. Now, if the systems aren't set up to support that kind of a customer, everything's going to fall over. We know we've just spoken about why this is important for the business or the employer. Now, why is this important for the employee? Having systems and workflows are important for employees because they know how they're expected to execute on the tasks that they're required to do in a day. So, for example, in a roastery, if a workflow has been set out, if an expectation has been placed on this is how you get things done and this is how we require you to execute your roasts every day. You have a between batch protocol that we require you to follow. These are the kinds of things that help people get shit done. And it's really frustrating. I've spoken to many roasters who just go in and do things their own way, and they don't know if they're doing it the right way or the wrong way. They just know that this is the only way that they personally have been taught to do things, and so they're just doing it as efficiently as they know. Now, when a workplace sets out the workflow, it helps employees understand what the expectations are. At this point, I want to encourage you, whether you're the business employer or you're the employee, flexibility is always important here. You will have some employees who can see the gaps of how to make things more efficient. You will have an opportunity as an employee to vocalize what you see can be improved on, but there's a right way to do that. And we spoke yesterday on the podcast about the language behind a culture. And if you're working for the right people, they will have constructed a mechanism for you to vocalize how to make improvements and what the protocol is for you to make suggestions on how things can improve. Now, an example of systems and workflows is a bar flow. So if in an example like that, the bar flow would be from the time that the order is received to the time it is given to the customer. I once worked in a cafe where the idea of a bar flow was left to the employees on each shift to determine. The shift lead was told that they could tell everybody how to do everything whenever they wanted. Now, this wasn't efficient because different shift leads worked differently. If you're in a culture that doesn't know what a shift lead is, the shift lead is pretty much either the head barista or the manager at the time. So each different shift lead was given the opportunity to run the team however they wanted. So from shift lead to shift lead, you were given you had a different culture essentially, and this didn't run efficiently. I had come from working in very, very efficient espresso bars, and this was chaos. So basically there were no sections. So there was an espresso section, there was a slow bar section, there was a food section, and there was the POS, the till or the register. And pretty much the only assigned position was the person on the POS, and everyone else, just as the orders came through, everyone picked up a ticket and made a coffee. This was really inefficient because when we got really, really busy, no one knew how to operate in a way that worked for the customer above everything else. So some customers were waiting, some customers got their coffees like that, and it wasn't efficient. And so when I propose that we perhaps create sections and assign a person to a section and come up with a communication protocol so that we are all using the same language, we're all understanding the flow of where the tickets are going and how coffees are getting made. So are we going in a clockwise direction from grinder to steaming to passing through the beverage to the customer? Are we going in an anti-clockwise direction when we're doing that? And all of that meant that we had to move a few things around so that we could come up with the best bar flow that worked for the staff as well as for the customer. And it took some tweaking, and it took some more conversations and a greater open-mindedness from everyone to adopt the system, but it worked. It infinitely improved the way we were delivering, because we now had a system and a workflow that everybody was on board to. The customers understood it and they appreciated it because they understood what their role was in everything. It wasn't perfect, not by any standard, but it did help, and it continued to improve and get tweaked long after I had left. And that's what you want. You want to be able to be in a situation where you know what's required of you as an employee, and as an employer, you want to know what the boundaries are that you're presenting to your staff so that they can just kind of slide into it, get everything done as quickly as possible, and not really have to think about how to come up with a new way. Like, there's no need to reinvent the wheel every time a new employee comes on board. The workflow should be determined by management or the leadership team. So that's one example of why workflow and systems are so important to our work in coffee. They have served me so well, so well. I was fortunate enough to learn from the best when it came to workflow, and it has gone on to be a cornerstone of why our bottling system in Elixir is so efficient, because we're all about excellence. There's a massively high standard with producing a premium product, and in order to do that and to do it efficiently, we have to be razor sharp with our systems, and we're constantly improving. Like, how can I steal a second from here, and how can I steal a second from there? And when you're bottling thousands of bottles, 1 second here and 1 second there really does add up as an employer, and it makes things more efficient for your team. They get excited when they're able to execute on their own efficiency and reach higher targets. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any ideas that would help anybody else, please put them in the comments below. Share this podcast with everybody, and don't forget to subscribe either here or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.